At my dad's second wedding, the tag on my chest said, Housekeeper. His new wife smirked, You're just staff here. No chair, no plate, no spot for me. My brother chuckled, Food is for family. I stood tall, slid off the family ring, and said, Then I'm no longer your family. Their smiles disappeared, but that was just the beginning. Imagine standing in the most opulent ballroom, surrounded by San Francisco's elite, as your own father toasts his new wife. But for you, his daughter, there's no seat at the table. Instead, you're wearing a uniform, a name tag declaring you housekeeper, and your brother just told you to your face, food is for family only. In that moment, I knew I had a choice, walk away quietly and let the humiliation consume me, or burn their entire empire to the ground. That night at my father's wedding was the absolute catalyst. It kicked off the most calculated corporate takedown San Francisco had ever seen. While they were busy labeling me the help, I was secretly pulling the strings, controlling 40% of their entire company through a network of shell corporations. While they were denying me a seat at their family table, I was preparing to take every single one of their seats in the boardroom. My name is Victoria Sterling. I'm 32, and this is how being called a housekeeper led to me putting my brother in handcuffs and my father in bankruptcy. Let me paint you a picture of the Sterling Empire. Sterling Industries, $280 million in assets, 1,200 employees across 3 states, and this gleaming 45-story tower in downtown San Francisco. My father, Richard Sterling, loves to remind everyone that he built it from nothing. Every single chance he gets, I graduated from Harvard MBA with distinction in 2016. But instead of joining the family business, like my brother Alexander, I decided to forge my own path. I founded Nexus Advisory. By 2023, we were handling corporate restructuring for mid-sized tech companies, pulling in $45 million in annual revenue. Not bad for what my father dismissively called Victoria's little hobby. The first real sign that things were rotten came at Thanksgiving dinner in 2023. 23 family members crammed around the mahogany table in my father's Nob Hill mansion. Alexander was, as usual, bragging about closing some $50 million acquisition. My father raised his glass. At least Alexander gives me grandchildren and real value to the Sterling name, he boomed. His eyes flickered to me. Some people contribute to legacy. Others just exist on the periphery. The message was crystal clear. 2 days later, an email landed in my inbox. Alexander had CC'd our father and Cassandra, his barely there 18-month-old wife. Stop pretending your little consulting firm matters, he wrote. You're embarrassing yourself trying to compete with real corporate work. Maybe focus on finding a husband instead. What Alexander didn't know was that I'd already bought 8% of Sterling Industries. My very first shell company, Evergreen Holdings LLC, had quietly acquired those shares from a disgruntled board member, Eleanor Blackwood. Richard had pushed her out years ago, and she was more than happy to sell to an anonymous investor who shared her vision for corporate accountability. Your little hobby business doesn't compare to real corporate work, Victoria, my father had scoffed just 6 months earlier. I tried to propose a joint venture, a plan where Nexus Advisory could save Sterling Industries $30 million through restructuring. He'd actually laughed, shuffling my meticulously prepared presentation right into his trash bin without even opening it. Why would he listen to his disappointment of a daughter? The second blow hit me completely by accident in January 2024. I'd stopped by Sterling Industries to drop off a birthday gift for Margaret, my father's secretary. She'd always been kind to me, despite everything. While waiting in the executive conference room, I noticed a folder on the table marked Sterling Estate Planning Confidential. I knew I shouldn't have looked, but I did. The new will, dated January 15, 2024, was brutally clear. Alexander would inherit 100% of Sterling Industries shares, all the real estate, and the family trust, valued at $180 million. Cassandra, my father's new wife, would get $30 million in cash, the Napa Vineyard, and the Tahoe vacation home. Even Alexander's ex-wife was mentioned, with a $2 million education trust for their children. My name appeared exactly once. It was in the section titled Disinheritance Clause. Victoria Sterling shall receive no portion of the estate as she has chosen to pursue interests contrary to the family's values and has failed to contribute meaningfully to the Sterling legacy. Failed to contribute meaningfully. The words blurred on the page as my hands shook. 8 years of building my own company, 12 major clients saved from bankruptcy, 200 employees who depended on me. None of it was meaningful enough for Richard Sterling. I carefully photographed every single page, then placed the folder back exactly as I'd found it. That evening, I sat in my Civic Heights apartment, staring at those photos on my laptop. Most people would have cried. Maybe confronted their father. Demanded answers. Instead, I opened another browser tab and logged into my 7th shell company account. If I wasn't family enough to inherit, then I'd simply buy what was never going to be given. The market price for Sterling Industries shares suddenly looked incredibly reasonable. By February 2024, the stakes became impossibly clear. Sterling Industries was orchestrating a massive merger with Pinnacle Corporation, a $500 million deal that would reshape the entire West Coast logistics industry. The announcement was slated for March 18 at the annual shareholders meeting. Alexander, their golden boy, would become CEO of the combined entity, commanding a company worth nearly $1 billion. Here's what kept me awake at night. My company, Nexus Advisory, had 200 employees depending on their next paycheck. 3 of our largest clients, companies worth a combined $300 million, had deep Sterling Industries connections. One word from Richard or Alexander, and those contracts would evaporate. They'd already proven they could be vindictive. My father's former CFO, Thomas Brennan, dared to start his own firm after leaving Sterling, and Richard made sure he never got a single Fortune 500 client again. After the merger, Alexander had declared at a Chamber of Commerce event, loud enough for me to hear from across the room, "We'll make sure certain consultancies never work in this city again." He'd been holding court with 5 CEOs, all of whom did business with both Sterling Industries and Nexus Advisory. The threat wasn't subtle. It was a promise. Then, February 28. 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. An encrypted email from Marcus Coleman. Subject, urgent. Victoria, they're destroying evidence. Alexander ordered all physical records destroyed by March 10. Digital records are being updated to remove traces. If you want proof of the embezzlement, we have less than 10 days. The $15 million they stole from employee pensions. It's all going to disappear from the books. I've hidden copies, but if they find out I'm the whistleblower before the 18th, I'm finished. They've already threatened my daughter's scholarship to Stanford. Please tell me you have a plan. A plan? I looked at my wall of sticky notes, a sprawling map of Sterling Industries' corporate structure, ownership records, voting bylaws. Yes, I had a plan. But it would cost me everything if it failed. March in San Francisco meant 3 things for the Sterling family: my father's wedding to Cassandra on the 15th, the shareholders meeting on the 18th, and exactly 72 hours between them for me to execute the impossible. The wedding invitation arrived in January, printed on paper that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Mr. Richard Sterling and Miss Cassandra Morgan request your presence. The date stared back at me, Saturday, March 15, 2024, 4 p.m. The Ritz-Carlton, San Francisco. 450 guests. Black tie required. The shareholders meeting notice came through official channels. Monday, March 18, 2024, 9 a.m. Sterling Tower, 45th floor boardroom. Agenda: approval of Pinnacle Corporation merger. The vote that would cement Alexander's rise to ultimate power. 72 hours. That's all I'd have between watching my family publicly humiliate me and my chance to reveal the truth. 72 hours to coordinate with lawyers, compile evidence, ensure witnesses were protected, and guarantee the SEC would be present. Most hostile takeovers took months of planning. I'd have a weekend. My phone vibrated again. An encrypted message from Eleanor Blackwood. The March 18th vote will reshape everything. Be ready. I've convinced 4 other board members to attend in person. They're expecting fireworks from Alexander's presentation. They have no idea what's really coming. P.S. I heard about the wedding arrangements. Stay strong. Wedding arrangements. I pulled up the email from Cassandra's wedding planner. You'll be in the receiving line as household staff coordinator. Please wear a simple black dress. Nothing that would distract from the wedding party. 3 days. 3 days to go from household staff coordinator to the person who would bring down an empire. The timeline was insane. But then again, they'd spent years making me feel insane for believing I had any value. It was time to prove them wrong. The dress fitting at Neiman Marcus should have been simple. March 10th, 5 days before the wedding. Cassandra had insisted all wedding participants attend, though my role was still mysteriously undefined. We don't need you in photos, Cassandra announced the moment I walked in, loud enough for the other bridesmaids to hear. You'll be managing the coat check. Much more suitable for your skill set. Alexander, lounging in a velvet chair, barely looked up from his phone. Just wear something simple, he drawled, like staff would. Nothing designer. It would look desperate on you anyway. The boutique fell silent. 6 bridesmaids, all Cassandra's sorority sisters, tried not to stare. The saleswoman's smile froze. Of course, I replied calmly. I understand my place perfectly. Do you though? Richard emerged from the men's fitting area, his new tuxedo impeccable. Because you keep showing up to family events, acting like you belong at the main table. Don't embarrass us with your presence, Victoria. Blend into the background where you're comfortable. Know your place. Know your place, Victoria, Cassandra added, admiring her $30,000 Vera Wang dress in the mirror. You're lucky to even be invited. I maintained eye contact with my father. You're absolutely right. I should know my place. I paused, letting them think they'd won. I'll make sure I'm exactly where I need to be. As I left the boutique, my phone buzzed. A FedEx delivery notification. Package from SEC delivered to your office. Signature confirmed. The Securities and Exchange Commission had received my formal whistleblower complaint. They'd be attending the shareholders' meeting as observers. Alexander and Richard were so busy putting me in my place, they hadn't noticed I was about to flip the entire board. March 12th, 3 days before the wedding. My Pacific Heights apartment had transformed into a war room. 7 laptop screens glowed, displaying the intricate corporate structures of my shell companies, Evergreen Holdings, Cascade Ventures, Marina Bay Investments, Golden Gate Capital, Presidio Partners, Sunset Holdings, and Bridge Trust. Together, they now controlled 40% of Sterling Industries. The Sterling family meeting votes are about to get very interesting, my lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, said, reviewing the share certificates. You've spent 5 years and $47 million acquiring these positions. They never saw it coming because you bought from disgruntled employees, ex-board members, and Richard's former mistresses, people he'd burned who were happy to sell to anonymous buyers. The centerpiece of our evidence sat in a locked briefcase. A USB drive from Marcus Coleman containing 3 years of forensic accounting. $15 million siphoned from employee pension funds through Meridian Holdings, a shell company Alexander thought was untraceable. Wire transfers. Cancel checks. Even recorded phone conversations where Alexander bragged about his creative accounting. Deloitte's forensic team has verified everything, Jennifer confirmed. 3 independent auditors, all willing to testify. The evidence is ironclad. I pulled up the email chain from Eleanor Blackwood, dating back to 2019. She'd been my silent mentor, guiding my share purchases, ensuring I stayed hidden until the perfect moment. I've been waiting 5 years for someone brave enough to expose them, her latest message read. Your father destroyed my husband's company in 2018. Watching his empire crumble from the inside will be poetic justice. My phone rang. Marcus Coleman. Panicked. Alexander's asking questions about who's been buying shares. He knows something's wrong but can't figure out what. He's hired investigators. Let him investigate, I replied, staring at my reflection in the window. 5 years of planning, $40 million invested, careers and lives at stake. In 6 days, none of his questions will matter. Eleanor Blackwood was the kind of woman who could destroy you with a smile. A 15% shareholder of Sterling Industries, widow of Richard's former business partner, and the only person who'd ever made my father visibly nervous. On March 13th, she invited me for tea at the St. Francis Hotel. Your father doesn't know I've been helping you buy shares, she said, stirring her Earl Grey with deliberate precision. 5 years ago, when he orchestrated my husband's bankruptcy, I swore I'd find the right person to take him down. You're that person, Victoria. She slid a manila folder across the table. 3 years of email exchanges between Richard and Alexander. All forwarded from Sterling Industries' own servers. Timestamps intact. Metadata preserved. Discussions about handling board members who asked too many questions. Plans to dilute minority shareholders after the merger. She looked at me, a cold satisfaction in her eyes. I've been collecting these since 2021. Your father made one mistake, he kept me on the board to avoid a lawsuit. That gave me access to everything. Every dirty deal, every betrayal, every crime. Why didn't you act sooner? I asked. Because I needed someone with clean hands, she explained. Someone they'd underestimated so completely they'd never see the attack coming. She smiled. Besides, revenge is a dish best served at a wedding reception, don't you think? The email headers were damning, from Richard Sterling Richard at sterlingindustries.com to Alexander Sterling Alexander at sterlingindustries.com. Subject, pension reallocation strategy. Date stamps from the company's own exchange server. Impossible to fake. Monday morning, Eleanor said, standing to leave. When you walk into that boardroom, you won't be alone. I've spent 3 years turning board members against them. They just don't know it yet. Marcus Coleman looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. We met at a parking garage in Soma on March 14th, the night before the wedding. He handed me a locked briefcase with shaking hands. 2,000 pages, he whispered, glancing around nervously. 3 years of Alexander's fraud, documented in excruciating detail. Cancelled checks with his signature transferring pension funds to Meridian Holdings. Wire transfers totaling $15 million. Even video recordings from security cameras showing him accessing the pension accounts after hours. I opened the briefcase. The evidence was overwhelming. Each document had been notarized, backed up in 5 locations, including 2 safety deposit boxes and 3 cloud servers. The crown jewel. A recorded Zoom call from December 2023, where Alexander explicitly told his personal banker to make the pension money disappear into Meridian before the audit. These documents have been notarized and backed up in 5 locations, Marcus confirmed. My lawyer has copies. The FBI has been notified but agreed to wait until after Monday's meeting to act. Alexander is still investigating who's been buying shares. He has no idea about this. A text interrupted us. From Alexander. Strange market activity in our shares. Someone's been accumulating. Find out who. Marcus went pale. He's getting paranoid. Yesterday, he asked why I'd been staying late so often in 2023. After Monday, I assured him, his paranoia won't matter. Your daughter's Stanford scholarship? I asked. He managed a weak smile. Eleanor Blackwood personally guaranteed it. Full ride. No matter what happens to me. He paused. You know what the ironic part is? Alexander taught me everything about forensic accounting. He created his own destroyer. I locked the briefcase. $15 million stolen from hardworking employees' retirements. Monday morning, Alexander would discover that every transaction had been meticulously documented by the very person he trained to hide them. These documents will be projected on a 100-inch screen in front of the entire board, I promised Marcus. His victims will get justice. March 15, 2024. The Ritz-Carlton San Francisco gleamed under perfect spring sunshine. 450 guests in designer clothing streamed through the lobby. CEOs, senators, federal judges, the entire West Coast elite, gathered to celebrate Richard Sterling's second chance at happiness. My name tag was waiting at the registration table. In elegant calligraphy, Victoria, housekeeper. Not Victoria Sterling. Not daughter of the groom. Just Victoria, housekeeper. The wedding coordinator, a nervous woman named Patricia, couldn't meet my eyes. Mrs. Morgan Sterling specifically requested this arrangement, she mumbled. You're to stand by the service entrance during the ceremony. No assigned seating for the reception. The ceremony space held 450 gilt chairs facing an altar drowning in white orchids. Every chair had a name card, except for the corner where I was directed to stand. 3 servers joined me there, all of us in black, invisible against the dark draping. Richard walked past during his entrance, his eyes sliding over me like I was furniture. Cassandra followed in her $30,000 dress, pausing just long enough to stage whisper to her maid of honor, staff should stay in the service area. We don't want any confusion about who belongs here. The CEO of Terralink Corporation stood 3 feet away. The federal judge who'd overseen Sterling Industries' biggest lawsuit sat in the front row. The publisher of the San Francisco Chronicle took photos. All of them witnessed Cassandra's pronouncement. Several shifted uncomfortably during the vows. As Richard promised to honor and cherish, I felt my phone vibrate. Eleanor Blackwood, seated in the 3rd row, had sent a photo of my name tag with the caption, evidence collected. The reception was worse. 450 place settings at crystal-laden tables. No seat for me. When I approached the buffet, Alexander materialized, blocking my path. Food is for family only, he laughed, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. Honestly, Victoria, know your place. That's when I felt something shift inside me. Not break. Crystallize, years of accepting their contempt, hoping for recognition that would never come, it all ended in that moment. I stood straighter, looked Alexander directly in the eyes, and smiled. A real smile. Because I knew something he didn't. In 72 hours, he'd be in handcuffs. The moment arrived during Richard's toast. He stood at the head table, champagne flute raised, Cassandra glowing beside him. 450 faces turned toward them as he began his speech about family, legacy, and the people who truly matter. Family, Richard declared, his voice carrying across the ballroom, is about contribution. It's about adding value. Some people, his eyes found me, standing by the service door, simply exist on the periphery, never quite measuring up. But today, we celebrate those who do. The room applauded. Alexander raised his glass toward me with a mocking salute. Cassandra's friends tittered behind manicured hands. I walked forward. Every step was deliberate, crossing the entire ballroom. Conversations died. Forks stopped moving. Richard's smile faltered as I approached the head table. I reached up and removed the family ring. My grandmother's ring, the one she'd given me before she died, the last person in the family who'd believed in me. I set it on the table in front of Richard with a soft click. Family, I said, my voice carrying the same clarity as his toast. If I'm just staff, then you're just another company to take over. Richard's face went white. Alexander started to stand, but I was already walking away. 450 members of San Francisco's elite watched me leave through the main entrance, not the service door. The whisper started before I even reached the lobby. In the parking lot, I pulled out my phone and typed 5 words to Jennifer Walsh: execute Project Revelation. Full acceleration. Her response was immediate: understood. SEC notified. Deloitte's team activated. Board members confirmed for Monday. All systems go. I sat in my Tesla, looking back at the glowing ballroom windows. They were probably laughing about my dramatic exit, turning it into another story about unstable Victoria. Let them laugh. They had exactly 71 hours and 23 minutes left of their empire. The next 48 hours blurred together in a symphony of precision planning. My apartment became command central for the most carefully orchestrated corporate takedown in San Francisco history. Saturday night through Monday dawn, Jennifer Walsh and her team of 12 lawyers worked in shifts, preparing SEC filings, shareholder notifications, and cease and desist orders. Every document had to be perfect. One procedural error, and Alexander's lawyers would tear us apart. Sunday, 2 p.m. Deloitte's forensic accounting team delivered their preliminary report. The embezzlement is worse than we thought, the lead auditor said. It's not just $15 million. There's another $8 million hidden in offshore accounts. $23 million total. Sunday, 6 p.m. The SEC confirmed attendance. James Mitchell, a senior investigator, would personally observe Monday's meeting. We've opened a formal investigation based on your whistleblower complaint, he confirmed. If your evidence holds, we'll make arrests on site. Sunday, 11 p.m. 17 of 23 board members confirmed they'd attend in person instead of calling in. Eleanor had done her work well. They smelled blood in the water. Monday, 3 a.m. I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, watching the city lights, holding the USB drive that would destroy Alexander. 6 months ago, I'd started planning this moment. But really, they'd been planning it for me for years. Every dismissive comment, every public humiliation, every reminder that I wasn't good enough. Monday, 6 a.m. Final confirmation from Marcus Coleman. I'm in the building. All original documents are in the boardroom safe. Alexander has no idea. Monday, 7 a.m. I put on my best suit. Armani. Charcoal gray. The one I'd worn to close my biggest client deal. In 2 hours, the Sterling Empire would face its reckoning. March 18, 2024, 9 a.m. Sterling Tower's 45th floor boardroom was Alexander's kingdom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the bay. A mahogany table that cost more than most people's houses. And a 100-inch presentation screen where he was displaying his merger masterpiece. The Pinnacle acquisition will position us as the dominant force in West Coast logistics, Alexander proclaimed to the assembled board. 23 board members, 5 executive VPs, and a handful of assistants filled the room. Within 18 months, we'll control the double doors opened. I walked in, flanked by 5 lawyers from Walsh & Associates, each carrying briefcases that might as well have been loaded weapons. The room fell silent. Alexander's laser pointer dropped from his hand, clattering on the marble floor. What the hell are you doing here? Richard stood up, his face already reddening. This is a closed session. Security. I'm here as the designated representative of 40% of Sterling Industries shareholders, I announced, as Jennifer Walsh stepped forward with the documentation. According to Section 7.3 of your corporate bylaws, any shareholder group controlling more than 25% can demand immediate board attention. The 100-inch screen behind Alexander changed. My legal team had taken control of the presentation system. Suddenly, the ownership structure of Sterling Industries filled the screen. 7 shell companies, all leading back to one name, Victoria Sterling. That's impossible. Alexander stammered. You don't have Evergreen Holdings, 8%, I listed calmly. Cascade Ventures, 7%. Marina Bay Investments, 6%. Should I continue? I moved to the center of the room, my heels clicking against the marble with metronomic precision. 40% total ownership, accumulated over 5 years from shareholders who were tired of the Sterling family's mismanagement. Eleanor Blackwood stood up slowly, a satisfied smile playing at her lips. I motioned to pause the merger discussion and address this new stakeholder concern. Seconded, said Thomas Chen. No, Thomas Whitman. Another board member Eleanor had turned. Richard couldn't speak. He stood there, mouth opening and closing like a landed fish as his empire's control structure crumbled on the screen for everyone to see. But the best part. I wasn't done. Not even close. Good morning, board members, I said, taking my place at the presentation podium. I believe you know me as the housekeeper. I clicked to the next slide. Before we discuss the merger, the board needs to address a more pressing matter. $23 million missing from employee pension funds. The screen exploded with evidence. 47 slides of meticulously documented fraud. Cancelled checks with Alexander's signature. Wire transfer confirmations to Meridian Holdings. Bank statements showing the systematic drainage of retirement accounts. This is fabricated. Alexander shouted, but his voice cracked. You can't just, every document has been authenticated by 3 independent sources, Jennifer Walsh interrupted. Deloitte's forensic team spent 2 weeks verifying each transaction. Mr. Coleman from accounting can attest to their authenticity. Marcus stood up from his seat in the corner, holding original documents. I've been documenting this fraud for 3 years. Every transfer, every forged authorization, every deleted email, I have copies. The room erupted. Board members shouted questions. Richard slammed his fist on the table, but I kept clicking through slides, each one more damning than the last. Slide 23, an email from Alexander to his personal banker. Subject line, pension reallocation complete. Slide 31, security footage of Alexander accessing pension systems at 2 a.m., outside normal procedures. Slide 39, the smoking gun. A recorded Zoom call where Alexander explicitly discussed hiding the stolen funds. This is a legal recording. Alexander protested. You can't use, actually, Mr. Sterling, we can. James Mitchell stood up, his SEC badge gleaming. I'm James Mitchell, Securities and Exchange Commission. We've been investigating Sterling Industries for 6 months based on Miss Sterling's whistleblower complaint. This evidence has been submitted to federal prosecutors. The color drained from Alexander's face as 2 FBI agents entered the boardroom. They'd been waiting in the hallway. Every document has been authenticated by 3 independent sources, I repeated, my voice steady as granite. The theft is undeniable. The evidence is overwhelming. And the consequences are inevitable. Richard finally found his voice. Victoria, you don't understand what you're doing. You're destroying your own family. No, I corrected him. I'm protecting 200 employees whose retirements you stole. Family doesn't do what you did. The FBI agents moved toward Alexander with practiced efficiency. Alexander Sterling, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and violation of ERISA pension regulations. Dad. Alexander looked desperately at Richard. Do something. But Richard couldn't even stand. He slumped in his chair as the agents cuffed his son in front of the entire board. The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the silent boardroom. This is insane. Alexander struggled against the agents. It's a setup. She's lying. James Mitchell from the SEC pulled up his tablet. Mr. Sterling, we have your signed confession from December's recorded call. You explicitly stated, and I quote, make the pension money disappear into Meridian before the audit. Would you like to hear the recording? On the conference phone, Cassandra's voice crackled through. Richard, what's happening? The news is saying Alexander was arrested. Eleanor Blackwood stood up. I motion for an immediate vote of no confidence in Richard Sterling as CEO and chairman. Seconded, came from 4 board members simultaneously. The vote was swift and brutal. 18 for removal. 3 against. 2 abstaining. Richard Sterling, the man who'd built an empire, was stripped of his power in less than 60 seconds. Furthermore, Eleanor continued, I nominate Victoria Sterling for an independent board seat, effective immediately. This time, the vote was 18-5 in favor. Trading had been halted 20 minutes ago when news of the FBI's presence hit the wire. Sterling Industries stock was in freefall. The merger with Pinnacle was dead. Everything Richard and Alexander had worked toward for the past year evaporated in the span of a single morning. The housekeeper motion passes, Eleanor announced with undisguised satisfaction. Meeting adjourned. As the FBI led Alexander out, he turned back one last time. You destroyed us, your own family. No, I replied, gathering my papers with steady hands. You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure everyone could see it. Richard remained frozen in his chair as board members filed out, most avoiding eye contact with him. His empire, his legacy, his carefully crafted reputation, all of it lay in ruins around him. The housekeeper had cleaned house. The legal dominoes fell fast and hard. Within 3 hours of Alexander's arrest, federal prosecutors unsealed a 47-count indictment: securities fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, conspiracy, and violation of pension protection laws. Each charge carrying potential decades in prison, the lead prosecutor announced at an impromptu press conference outside Sterling Tower. Alexander Sterling faces a minimum of 15 years if convicted on even half these counts. This represents one of the largest pension fraud cases in California history. Sterling Industries faced its own reckoning. The SEC imposed an immediate $75 million fine for failure to maintain proper oversight. The Department of Labor launched a separate investigation. 3 class action lawsuits were filed before markets closed, seeking damages exceeding $200 million. But I wasn't interested in revenge theater. That afternoon, I sat with Jennifer Walsh and Sterling Industries' interim CEO to structure the solution. Every penny stolen from the pension fund will be restored, I stated. Full restitution, plus interest, paid from the company reserves and Alexander's frozen assets. That's nearly $30 million with penalties and interest, the interim CEO protested. Then Sterling Industries better find it, I replied. Those employees worked their entire careers for that money. Richard, stripped of his titles but still a shareholder, had to watch as his personal assets were frozen pending investigation. The Nob Hill mansion, the yacht, the art collection, all potentially subject to seizure if he was found complicit. By 5 p.m., the pension fund had received its first emergency restoration payment of $10 million. The remaining amount would be paid within 90 days, supervised by federal monitors. Justice isn't revenge, it's accountability, I told the employee committee that had gathered in the lobby. Your retirements are safe. That's all that really mattered. Marcus Coleman pulled me aside afterward. They offered me chief financial officer, he said, still seeming stunned. The board wants someone they can trust. You've earned it, I replied. He nodded, then asked quietly, what about you? You could be CEO. The board would support it. No, I said firmly. I don't want their empire. I just wanted my dignity back. The personal aftermath was swift and merciless. Cassandra filed for divorce within 48 hours, but her prenuptial agreement was ironclad. She'd get nothing from the frozen assets. The wedding that had cost $500,000 became the most expensive humiliation in San Francisco's social history. I didn't know about any fraud, she told reporters outside her lawyer's office, designer sunglasses failing to hide her puffy eyes. I'm a victim, too. But the prenup Richard had insisted on, to protect the family wealth, now protected him from her. She'd receive only what she'd brought to the marriage, debt from her failed modeling agency and a reputation in tatters. Alexander's situation grew worse daily. His wife filed for sole custody of their children. His country club revoked his membership. His name was removed from every charity board in the city. The golden boy who'd had everything handed to him now sat in federal detention. Bail denied as a flight risk. Richard, aged 10 years and 10 days, was alone in his mansion, staff dismissed, accounts frozen, awaiting potential charges. He became a ghost in his own life. The society invitations stopped. The phone stopped ringing. The man who'd once commanded rooms full of CEOs now couldn't get a returned call. I received a letter from him, delivered by courier. Victoria, I know you won't respond, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I see now what I refused to see before. You were the only one with real strength, real intelligence, real integrity. I was so blinded by my own prejudices that I pushed away the only child who truly inherited my business acumen. I don't ask for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know. I filed it with my lawyer, unanswered. Apologies without change are just manipulation. Alexander's letter from federal detention was shorter, but no less manipulative. Sister, we both know this has gone too far. If you recant your testimony, say you were mistaken about some details, I could get minimum security, maybe even probation. We're family, Victoria. Family forgives. That one I kept as evidence of a continued criminal mindset, useful for the prosecution. Cassandra tried Instagram, of all things. Daily messages about girl power and supporting each other through tough times. She even tagged me in a post about women in business inspiring each other. The woman who'd literally labeled me housekeeper now wanted to be inspiration buddies. The most surprising contact came through certified mail, a letter from my mother's sister in Boston, whom I hadn't heard from in 15 years. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen. My mother holding infant me, with a handwritten note on the back, "My brilliant daughter will change the world." Below the photo, my aunt had written, "Your mother saw this coming. Before she died, she told me Richard would try to diminish you because your light would expose his darkness. She made me promise to send this when you finally stood up to him. She'd be so proud. That letter I kept. The rest went into a folder labeled, "No response necessary," that my lawyer maintained. Apologies without change are just manipulation, and I had no interest in being manipulated anymore. Setting boundaries after a lifetime of accepting disrespect required surgical precision. Jennifer Walsh helped me draft the protocols that would govern any future contact with the Sterling family. All communication must go through legal counsel, the document stated. No direct contact via phone, email, social media, or in person. Any attempt at direct contact will be considered harassment and met with appropriate legal action. I blocked Richard, Alexander, and Cassandra on every platform. Their phone numbers, email addresses, even their lawyers' paralegals, all filtered straight to Jennifer's firm. The wall between us wasn't built from anger, but from self-preservation. The restraining order against Cassandra became necessary when she showed up at my office building 3 times in 1 week, tearfully telling security she was my stepmother and had a family emergency. Security camera footage of her performances went straight to the court. Therapy helped me process the trauma I'd normalized for years. You are all alone, my therapist said. Establishing new rules for your life is the most basic form of self-care. I established those rules: no meetings with anyone who'd witnessed my humiliation and stayed silent unless it was strictly business. No friendly coffees to catch up with people who'd enabled the abuse. No obligation to forgive just because society expected it. Family isn't DNA, I told Dr. Martinez. It's respect, loyalty, and love. I've learned that chosen family, the people who saw my worth when I couldn't, matter more than blood relations who tried to break me. The boundaries extended to my company. Nexus Advisory would never work with Sterling Industries while any Sterling family member remained involved. We had standards now, and those standards included not enabling abusers, even reformed ones. Some called me cold. Others said I was unforgiving. But for the first time in my life, I felt safe, protected, valued. The boundaries weren't walls keeping others out. They were foundations keeping me stable. By September 2024, 6 months after the boardroom coup, Nexus Advisory's valuation hit $500 million. We announced our IPO with Goldman Sachs as lead underwriter. The hobby business that didn't matter was about to go public at a valuation that exceeded Sterling Industries' current market cap. I established the Sterling Foundation, deliberately using the name, with $50 million of my own money. Its mission: providing full-ride MBA scholarships for women who'd been told they weren't good enough. The first recipient: Marcus Coleman's daughter, who'd almost lost her Stanford spot due to Alexander's threats. My engagement to David Chen happened quietly. He'd been there through everything, never trying to fix or save me, just standing beside me as I saved myself. He proposed not with fanfare, but with a simple, "Will you?" The answer was yes. The chosen family I'd built became my real family. Eleanor Blackwood, my unofficial mentor. Marcus Coleman, the brother I should have had. Jennifer Walsh, the protector I'd needed. My employees at Nexus, who'd trusted me when I barely trusted myself. We gathered for Thanksgiving 2024 at my new Marin County home. Not a mansion, just a place filled with warmth and laughter. 23 people who'd earned their seats at my table through loyalty and love, not blood or obligation. Success is the best revenge, I toasted, looking at the faces of people who actually cared about me. But peace is the ultimate victory. David raised his glass. To Victoria, who showed us that sometimes the best way to clean house is to build a better one. The laughter that followed was real, unmarred by hidden contempt or conditional acceptance. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Looking back now, 3 months after that wedding where they labeled me housekeeper, I don't feel anger anymore. Just clarity. I spent 32 years trying to earn love that was never available. Respect that was conditionally withheld. A place at a table that was always just out of reach. The sterling silver spoon I was supposedly born with turned out to be stainless steel, functional, but never quite good enough for the sterling standard. But here's what Richard and Alexander never understood. Stainless steel doesn't tarnish. It doesn't need constant polishing to maintain its value. It's strong, practical, and resilient. Just like the daughter and sister they threw away. The empire they built on ego and embezzlement crumbled in a single morning. The legacy they killed themselves protecting evaporated the moment handcuffs clicked. The family name they valued above actual family became synonymous with corporate fraud. Meanwhile, I built something real. A company based on integrity. Relationships rooted in respect. A life where my worth isn't determined by those who refuse to see it. Your worth exists whether they acknowledge it or not, I tell every scholarship recipient, every young woman who comes to me with stories of being overlooked, undervalued, dismissed. The family ring I returned to Richard that day. He tried to send it back through his lawyer, claiming it was rightfully mine as the eldest daughter. I had it auctioned for charity. It raised $30,000 for a women's shelter. That ring had been in the Sterling family for 4 generations, but it took leaving the family to finally do some good. I'm Victoria Sterling. I'm the housekeeper who cleaned house. And I've never been more proud of my name. Not because of who gave it to me, but because of what I made it mean.